All right, here we are. We're streaming away. We're streaming, we're streaming. We're streaming today. Hey guys, how y'all doing out there? Peanut Butter Beatrice, good to see you. Peanut Butter Beatrice, always like finger on the trigger, ready to go. How did this week go for me? You know, this week has been basically just contemplation, rest. Yeah, I picked a day to stream. You bet I did. Why, did something happen? Is something going on in the world that we should know about? As my longtime viewers know, or as you guys have been aware of, as I've been updating, I quit my job, or I was let go from my job. We agreed to part ways, and I'm kind of loose in the world, right? And I'm settling into the idea that in many ways it's good. It's like a clearing of the energy, right? I wasn't happy at that other job, and there are other opportunities on the horizon for me that are opening up. Good reading opportunities, good things to... I've actually booked a couple, like... I got connected to a retirement community that basically was like, yeah, come in and read books to us, and we'll pay you for that. And I was like, oh, okay. And that's kind of opening up, and I've booked a couple of events, and I've booked a couple of things, and I'm hoping to book more, and I'm hoping to expand on that. And then my course to teach English as a second language is starting to happen. So it's there are things that are occurring, and there are things that are happening to me that feel positive, but I still am in this kind of position of stasis, right? Like I feel like I'm waiting a lot. I feel like I'm just waiting for things to unfold, and that I feel like what the line that I've been using is that I'm like waiting in divine timing, just waiting for the universe to kind of unfold, and that I don't actually have to do anything for my personal life, that things seem to just be working out, right? Things just seem to be working out, and that the negative things that have happened to me, right, the bad things that seem to be going on in my life are just stepping stones to other things. And so that's sort of my personal update, and that this time next year, I'll probably be, teaching English as a second language, right? Be going into retirement communities, reading books. There's always my bees, right? Which is an ongoing kind of affair. Yeah, and just plugging along while we watch America continuously collapse downward into a civil war. So I guess we should speak about that. Dito, yep. D2 over on Twitch says, guess he lost that debate. Yeah, Ungknowing, good to see you. Long Defiant, good to see you. Content, always good to see you. Yeah, real wild week. Lots of ups and downs. And, I mean, that's just kind of the normal now, right? Like, I know for me, one of the things that has gotten very difficult for me is staying grounded. Staying grounded in all of this, staying aware of my own personal surroundings. It's so easy to get caught up in the news and in the like larger picture of everything, and to feel unmoored from what's going on in my day-to-day. And so reminding myself that, hey, what's actually going on in the world, like what's actually happening out in the world, it matters, certainly, but what matters more are the people who are right in front of you, the connections that you have with the people who are right in front of you. That it's good to take time to I think deal with this larger anxiety that we have, like that we all collectively share. But to me, the best way of doing that is to stay focused on your real tangible, like what's right in front of you reality, and to get grounded into that. Rusty, good to see you, my man. this Charlie Kirk moment, right? There's been a wide array of responses. I think one of the things that is certainly going to happen is that this will be exploited by the power structure in order to crack down even further. That this is not good news for anyone, really. That my initial response to it was one of kind of like bad man gets what he deserves kind of thing, right? Like we're watching a horror movie and the villain gets shot. You're like, oh yeah, okay. And like the centrists among us, like the enlightened centrists, are like, it is always bad when political violence occurs. And it's like, yeah, I mean, is there a point? My question to all of this is there a point where it becomes acceptable to fight back? Like, it's always strange that when it's like vigilante justice such as this, there's a wide array of condemnation, but when it's structural, right? When the powerful are literally committing a genocide right in front of your face, there doesn't seem to be the same kind of outcry. That I found this great meme that sort of encapsulates my feelings on it, right? A lot of people who haven't condemned a fucking ongoing genocide are condemning political violence today. It's sort of how I feel about it, right? Like that, yeah, like Charlie Kirk is a fascist, and there are lots of fascists in our society, and the idea that we are going to be able to negotiate our way out of it seems less and less likely. It seems less and less likely that the political structure is willing to accommodate people who are actually trying to find solutions to the problems that exist in the society. And there's also this other narrative going around that Charlie Kirk was debating people. Like, I think that that's sort of technically true. That's sort of the veneer. That's the show that he was putting on. Like, the dog and pony show of Charlie Kirk is, I believe this, change my mind, right? Like, that's sort of the dog and pony show of what it is that he's doing. But as I've said over and over again on this channel, fascists are not debating for the sake of debate. Fascists don't actually care about what is true or real, right? They don't actually care to discover a common ground or a commonality. That's not how fascism works. That the reason why a guy like Charlie Kirk is quote-unquote debating is to, A, terrorize the people he intends to terrorize, which are the subhumans that he designates as subhuman. So Latinos, the black population, right? Like queer people, trans people. The terror is the first is one of the reasons why he does what he does, because you need to terrorize people who you intend to eradicate, which is the goal. And then the second, and this is very important, the second reason why fascists debate publicly is to recruit, right? That the goal of someone like Charlie Kirk is to find like-minded individuals to create large blocks of the society so that when they begin purging people, they'll have the numbers, right? That it is fundamentally a numbers game. That if you have 1 million fascists and there are 100,000, black people, you win, right? Like you're gonna win. And like, never forget, for people like Charlie Kirk, and I include people like Ben Shapiro in this, Matt Walsh. Like, for these people, Gaza, right, the Palestinian genocide, is the model. That is the way that they want to structure the society. That you take the minority group that you consider to be subhuman, you take the group of people you consider to be lesser than, right, and you put them in essentially a concentration camp and draw a giant line around them and put a wall around them. And then you can do what you like with them. And that's the goal. And I feel like that context, the reality of that actual situation, is never actually brought into the conversation. It's not actually taken as true that these people, their intention is the eradication of subhumans. Like that's their position. Like it's you listen to them and you're like, yeah, your goal is to eradicate subhumans, right? Or at the very least subjugate them, right? Like, Charlie Kirk has been explicit. Like, I have this great CBC article. Some of Charlie Kirk's most controversial takes. I think I'm just going to read this. It's been a long time since I've actually read articles on the stream, and I think I want to get back in the habit of doing that. JT, good to see you. Charlie Kirk, who died after being shot during an appearance at Utah Valley University Wednesday, had a long history of contentious views and often courted controversy with statements that seemed designed to provoke those who disagreed with him. A right-wing activist and co-founder of Turning Point USA, a conservative youth organization, Kirk also helped mobilize young Trump voters and was well known for his Prove Me Wrong videos, in which he would face off against students on college campuses across the United States to debate various topics. Kirk was also a prominent radio host and podcaster who frequently used his platforms to rail against liberal viewpoints on subjects as varied as gun control, climate change, the civil rights movement, and 2S LGBTQ+ issues. Here are a few of his most controversial takes. Gun control. A couple of years ago, Kirk made a comment about some gun deaths in the U.S. being worth it to ensure the continued existence of the Second Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, which is the right to keep and bear arms. It's worth it to have a cost of, unfortunately, some gun deaths every single year, so that we can have the Second Amendment to protect our God-given rights. He said during an April 5th, 2023 appearance at the Salt Lake City campus of Awaken Church, "That is a prudent deal." I love this quote because it is just like, okay, Charlie, prudent deal. You agreed to it. It's like he manifested this upon himself, right? That's what's delicious about this quote that I've seen lots of people using. Radio Halifax, good to see you, my man. Is that it is very much like the universe said, oh, Charlie Kirk thinks it's worth it. He thinks that it's worth having some people die every single year to gun-related deaths. So, he should be the poster boy for this, right? I just picture the like moment that Charlie Kirk is shot and just like a quote of like worth it, right? I haven't seen this meme, but that's the meme that pops into my head. Charlie Kirk being shot and with this quote. Prudent deal. Like, the thing that I continuously find myself saying is, like, what do you guys expect? Like, how do you think this is going to go? What, like, 1 + 1 equals what? Moments before Kirk was shot on Wednesday, a numerous live stream of the event showed an audience member asking him how many mass shooters in the last 10 years have been transgender Americans. Too many, Kirk responded. The person said 5 was the number, then asked Kirk if he knew how many mass shooters in total in America had seen in the last 10 years. Counting or not counting gang violence, Kirk replied. Seconds later, a loud crack that sounded like a gunshot rang out, and Kirk was seen briefly moving his hand to his neck before falling from his chair as attendees began to run. Civil rights. At a December 2023 political conference hosted by his Turning Points USA group, Wired magazine reported that Kirk decried not only Martin Luther King Jr., calling the civil rights leader awful and not a good person, but also the Civil Rights Act of 1965 that outlawed discrimination on the basis of race, color, religion, sex, and national origin, and prohibited segregation. I have a very, very radical view on this, but I can defend it, and I've thought about it, Kirk said. We made a huge mistake when we passed the Civil Rights Act in the 1960s. Kirk argued that the statute had brought about what he said was a permanent bureaucracy meant to promote diversity, equity, and inclusion. Yeah. Oh no. Oh no. An institution designed to promote diversity, equity, and inclusion. Oh no. That we might actually have an institutionalized idea that every single person that lives in the society should be included in the society and treated with equality. Oh no. What Kirk is trying to do, very clearly, is strip people of their basic human rights. Because he's a Nazi. Or he was a Nazi, right? And I'm just struck right now with a wave of like I know people in the United States who work in these kinds of institutions. And someone like Charlie Kirk was assaulting them, and they are under attack, and people are struggling, and that the death of Charlie Kirk is going to make those people's lives likely harder. That's sort of the great irony or the great annoyance of all of this, is that Charlie Kirk's death is definitely going to be used by the power structure in order to make the people who are fighting for diversity, equity, and inclusion, it's going to make their lives harder. And I root for those people. And I pray for those people. Because all those people are trying to do is make a stable civil society for everyone involved in it. That regardless of your skin color, regardless of your sex, your gender, regardless of whatever identifier you actually have as a human being living in your society, you should be treated with a certain level of dignity. And a man like Charlie Kirk disagrees with that. That he thinks that there should be subclasses of humans, and that certain humans should be excluded from the society. And then he scratches his head, and people scratch their head and wondered what happened. Abortion. Last year, for the social media program Surrounded, Kirk faced off against 25 liberal college students to defend his viewpoints, which included the belief that abortion is murder and should be illegal, including in cases of rape. It is a growing consensus in the pro-life world that abortion is never medically necessary, he told one female student, who then asked if someone raped his hypothetical 10-year-old daughter, would he want the child to be born? The answer is yes, the baby would be delivered, he said. He said having an abortion in that situation would be pandering to evil. Wouldn't it be a better story to say something evil happened and we do something good in the face of evil instead of saying we're going to do evil? As always, men like Charlie Kirk live in a pretend universe. Baldy, good to see you, my man. My view on abortion has always been it's up to the woman and their doctor. That's really what it is. But there is no blanket catch-all. But Charlie Kirk's views are informed by his religious perspective, right? Like, just listen to what he's saying. Wouldn't it be a better story to have if something evil happened and we do something good in the face of evil? So this is a religious conversation. Well, the way the society is structured is that we are protected from your religious worldview. That we're not making decisions based on what your religion has to say. You can make those decisions for yourself, right, based on your religious worldview, but you can't actually inflict your religious worldview on us. But this flows in completely to who Charlie Kirk was, which, a Nazi, essentially. Someone who believed in the idea that there are subhumans. Gaza. Kirk also garnered backlash for his support to Israel, backing its nearly 2-year campaign in Gaza. He was described by Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on Wednesday as a lion-hearted friend of Israel. Netanyahu said he spoke to him 2 weeks ago and invited him excuse me, to visit Israel. Kirk fought the lies and stood tall for Judeo-Christian civilization, Netanyahu said. His boundless pride in America and his valiant belief in free speech will leave a lasting impact. On July 28th, Kirk posted a video on X saying, "No, Israel is not starving Gazans," amid calls from humanitarian organizations to avert further starvation and famine in the region. So, one of the things Hull, good to see you, my man. One of the things that I find myself continuously saying to people who are like, you shouldn't celebrate the death of Charlie Kirk, or you shouldn't feel joy about the death of Charlie Kirk and all of this. It's like, so do you think we shouldn't have hung Goebbels? That's the question that I'd really like answered. And I'd like somebody to actually tackle that meaningfully and actually answer why they think that Goebbels should not have faced consequences for his participation in the Nazi regime. Because that, in my view, is fundamentally what we are talking about when we're talking about Charlie Kirk. The Charlie Kirk's role in the Gaza genocide, as well as the unfolding collapse of his own society downward, his role is pretty close to the role that Goebbels played as one of the major propagandists through the World War II period and through the Nazi period. So, should Goebbels have been set free? Should he have not faced consequences for his actions? And I'm sure that will delve down a line of vigilantism versus due process and all of this kind of stuff. But the fundamental question, like, Kirk is literally endorsing a genocide. Like, I just find myself asking, like, at what point are we fighting back? At what point are we allowed to fight back? At what point does it become reasonable or perhaps even necessary to fight back? Conspiracy theories. During the height of the COVID-19 pandemic, Kirk frequently shared conspiracy theories on social media and was briefly banned from the social media platform then known as Twitter for spreading misinformation. In March 2020, he posted about the China virus, a phrase that was quickly adopted by the US President Donald Trump, then in his first term. In December that year, the year-end gala for Kirk's Turning Point USA group went ahead in Florida, despite the state's COVID-19 mitigation efforts. He also notably compared pandemic vaccine requirements to apartheid during the 2021 interview with Tucker Carlson. In a February 2024 Instagram post, Kirk referred to the Great Replacement conspiracy theory, which has been widely debunked, suggesting undocumented immigrants are coming to the United States to replace white Americans. This I think is going to be my favorite. Mark, good to see you, my man. Empathy and debate. On the October 12, 2022 episode of The Charlie Kirk Show, Kirk discussed how former U.S. President Bill Clinton used empathy and sympathy as a political strategy. In an aside, Kirk went off on the term empathy. I can't stand the word empathy, actually. I think empathy is a made-up New Age term that does a lot of damage. So, again, it's like, oh, so if Kirk doesn't like empathy, then why should we have empathy for his situation? Admirers have stressed that for all of Kirk's confrontational rhetoric, he relished debate and the free exchange of ideas. Again, I think that this is, like, when it comes to fascists, they're not debating in good faith, because they're not actually trying to find solutions. They're trying to normalize the idea of reducing some people into being a subhuman. And that's the point. Like, Charlie Kirk isn't interested in finding a common ground with the DEI people. He's interested in recruiting as many people as possible to demonize DEI and to demonize these organizations and to demonize the people that work within them. That's his goal, and that's what he's trying to do. It's not about debate. It's not about solutions. It's about recruitment. Mark Jr. says, yep, the deprogram is gone. Yep. Just for those who don't know, the deprogram was a subreddit that had a lot of support on Reddit, and was shut down just today, in fact. Very popular leftist place, and it I mean, it's getting to be that there are no, like, where do we actually have these conversations in the first place? How if every single time, like when George Floyd died, there were very prominent, like, you could go to just our politics, just like the main places, and see people celebrating the death of George Floyd and talking about how great it is that we have a police culture that does this kind of stuff. But one person on the right, and on the far right no less, gets taken out, and you just ban people. And this is becoming a trend, right? U.S. officials plan to punish foreigners making light of Charlie Kirk's death. Like, action will be taken against foreigners in the United States who are considered to be praising, rationalizing, or making light of Charlie Kirk's death, a top state official has said. So, this figure who the right holds up as a bastion of free speech is now being used as a way to crush people's free speech. Interesting. Vitor over on Twitch, hi comrade, good to see you. Oddity, good to see you. Yeah, that empathy shit makes him a sociopathic. Yeah. No, I mean, Charlie Kirk is a sociopath, pretty nakedly. Like, calling empathy bad, believing that diversity and inclusion is bad. Like, it's pretty wild. Like, it's pretty wild to say that, like, the civil rights movement was a mistake. The Civil Rights Act, rather, was a mistake. Like, that's pretty... I don't think you come back from that. Like, I think that if you believe that kind of thing, you've got some pretty major soul-searching to do. And, I mean, that's all Charlie Kirk's got now. Yeah, I mean, who is actually, like Baldy points out, like, Shoe on Head, Asmongold, Tectone, all officially a Nazi. Hell, Tectone tweeted White Lives Matter. Like, who, you literally have, like, oh god, I'm blanking on his name completely. Piker, right? Hassan Piker. He's, like, literally the only one. Mark Jr. writes, on the bright side, I'm beside my wife as she's about to give birth in the hospital, bringing some joy into my life. Well, that's a beautiful thing. Well, Mark. So you're sitting beside your wife in a hospital, and you decide, I'm going to take this moment, I'm going to tune in to John's show. To have a conversation. How funny. Well, I'm glad that you're sharing that moment with me, Mark. That's beautiful. I've got a great name for your new child, Jonathan. Right? If it's a boy, you better be naming that boy Jonathan. Vitor over on Twitch writes, I'm happy Bolsonaro was sentenced to 27 years in prison by the Supreme Court. There you go. Wow, a civil society. So rare to see. So rare to see an actual civil society actually do something to fascists. So, glad to hear it. Glad to hear Brazil is taking steps towards being a more civil society. White Cobra, first time chatter, writes, I just got banned in a random stream for saying R.I.P. Kirk. That's actually sad. I mean, I don't know what stream you said that in, or how they even took it. But it is like, look, my position on Charlie, I feel like I am yet to actually fully state what my position actually is on Charlie Kirk, and so let me state it here. This is the thing that you can clip, right? Clip this and send this around. Here, I'll even get myself like really nicely in view here. So there's, hold on. Yeah. How we doing? Did we do it? Am I fully in camera? Yeah, here we go. Charlie Kirk was a fascist, pretty nakedly. I think that it is a sad, sorry state of affairs that America has declined so rapidly that even a man like him would be shot. But at the end of the day, what do we expect? People like Charlie Kirk are doing everything they can to make life harder for the vast majority of people who live in America. And that's the hard truth. That if your job is to make life harder for most people who live in your society, then the natural consequence of that is exactly what has happened. Like, it's not even a moral consideration at some point. That if your job is to steal money from people, if your job is to condemn millions of people to a life of pain and hardship, then don't be surprised when bullets come your way. And that's not a threat. It's just a basic statement of fact. And so my feeling on this Charlie Kirk assassination is, like, and I'm not saying this with revelry, I'm not saying this with, like, celebration, but Charlie Kirk got exactly what he deserved. He literally got what he asked for. Right? That he was going around saying some gun deaths are fine. He was going around antagonizing and terrorizing people while recruiting other fascists to his cause. He got exactly what he asked for. Like, the same type of people who will say of women who are raped while wearing revealing clothing while they were asking for it seem to not be able to apply that exact same kind of logic to Charlie Kirk. Like, there does come a point, and you can get into the, like, moral philosophy of it all. You can retreat into your enclaves and your little circles and your ghettos and your intellectual, thought bubbles and your think tanks and your think groups, and have, like, big debates about the moral correctness of should this have happened, and, well, free speech, and, he did have it, and all this kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, humans are primarily emotional creatures. And if all you do is antagonize humanity and antagonize humans, humans will respond. And at the end of the day, bottom line, and again, not from a like, yeehaw, let's celebrate this, just from a basic nuts and bolts, like I look at reality and this is what reality is kind of way, Charlie Kirk got exactly what he asked for. That he died the way he lived, as a Nazi. Mark writes, yes, Kirk is a victim of the propaganda machine that propped him up. He is a victim of the system as much as us, except we are still here breathing. Yeah, I mean, it requires a pretty reduced worldview to hold the views that Charlie Kirk held. Like, I often talk on this channel about how people stop developing. That you kind of become you can be like a 65-year-old 10-year-old. I really think that Charlie Kirk is essentially 6. That he never actually developed past the age of 6. That intellectually and morally, the way that he would discuss things, right, the way that he perceived things, his worldview, is essentially the worldview of a 6-year-old. And that he never developed past that point. Anemone, good to see you. Anemone writes, I love your shirt, John. Looking dapper. Thank you, Anemone. I did it just for you. Mark writes, yes, I remember you bringing this up. Many are trained to be mentally immature. Well, there is a training aspect to it, I think. But I also think that it's kind of natural. Like, I think that there's a natural thing that happens to large segments of the population that especially if you are coming from a position of wealth or privilege, right, you don't have to develop. Like, I've spoken to 15-year-olds that I was like, oh, you're like 40, like you're old, like you've got a spirit. And I've spoken to 60-year-olds that I'm like, yeah, you're a 10-year-old. Like, you never develop. And there's a lot of reasons for that. And the primary reason, near as I can tell, is whether or not you actually have to respond meaningfully to the world around you. Right? Do you actually have to live... like, Charlie Kirk never had to live with the people he was condemning. Right? He never actually had to communicate meaningfully with them. They weren't part of his community. That he lived in an isolated bubble. Baldy McNosehair donates $10. I'm going to be very conspiracy for a moment. I don't blame you for kicking me out of the chat because I'm going to sound batshit crazy right now. The CIA is behind the shooting. Okay, yeah, we are yet to get into the conspiracy side of this. So let's do it. Let's go. Let's have some fun. Let's, I think that there is a narrative, that the CIA and most likely Mossad, right, are involved in this Charlie Kirk assassination. Let me be very, very clear. I think the most likely explanation is that Charlie Kirk was a Nazi that was antagonizing people and somebody got tired of it. To me, that's like the most likely scenario, where Charlie Kirk just said too much shit and made too many enemies. And now that his philosophy and his worldview has taken power, people are seeing what it actually means. Like, Kirk has been going around for 10 years talking this way, and now he's in power, basically. Like, he personally is not in power, but his worldview is in power. And people are seeing what that means. Lightwave 2 says hello. The White Cobra says, if you think a man spreading an opinion, even if it's wrong, deserves death, that's pretty bad. To be clear, White Cobra, right? Like, there's a difference between saying I prefer the color red over the color blue and saying I think that if you have black skin, you should be an inferior person, which is essentially Charlie Kirk's worldview. Like, we're not even talking about, like, even if it's wrong. Like, we're talking about people needing to actually defend themselves against a worldview that intends to do them harm. Right? Like, this is why I think the concept of free speech has been perverted pretty badly in the society. I don't think you should be able to stand up and say black people are inferior. Like, I just don't think that that's something that should be permitted or tolerated in the civil society. Dave, good to see you. So the most credible conspiracy theory that I have heard that puts together a bunch of different pieces that makes a certain level of sense is that Charlie Kirk was beginning to turn away from Israel, and that the Gaza genocide had become too naked, too obvious, and that Charlie Kirk was actually beginning to platform anti-Israeli voices, and that he was allowing anti-Zionists to actually come up on stage, and he was actually talking to them, right? As opposed to just lockstep forward, Zionism is good, anybody who speaks out against Israel is an anti-Semite kind of stuff. And the society is turning against Israel, right? Like, as the boomers begin to die off, right, the civil society will begin to improve because reprehensible worldviews are going to begin to become scarcer. The boomers are this last vestige of defense against the idea that Israel is an apartheid state. And the youth of the nation, as they grow old and replace the boomers, will see pretty clearly what Israel represents, which is an apartheid Nazi state. And and it will be tempting for political forces throughout the West, the United States, to it will be tempting for them to actually begin to agree with that concept. To say that, yeah, like, Israel, maybe we shouldn't be supporting Israel. And so, how do you send a message to those people? How do you send a message to the people who have soft support? Right? Well, assassinate someone. Show them, get them back into line. Say, like, hey, we could do this to you too, you know. And that's a conspiracy theory that I think has some resonance. It's believable. Like, I can believe that Mossad assassinated Charlie Kirk to keep the political forces throughout the United States in line. So, someone who is not that important to the unfolding, like, Charlie Kirk isn't really necessary anymore, right? That his usefulness has run out as a tool for the empire, because he's basically hit the apex now, and that it's declining from here, and that it's likely that Charlie Kirk's forward momentum into the society is going to fade out. So just use him for another objective. Yep, and I think Anemone's saying it, right? They want to prevent Charlie Kirk from becoming another Carlson, right? Having another kind of Tucker Carlson figure walking around. That oddly, and it's so odd to say out loud, Tucker Carlson has become like this really outspoken anti-Zionist voice. Like, it's been so odd to see Tucker Carlson's trajectory in the society. Mark writes, I've also seen conspiracies that this death was a way to bring MAGA together again. Yeah, there has been a huge split since the Epstein stuff, but this has everyone focused on the evil left libs again. And I mean, I think it'll definitely be used by the Empire to ramp up their objectives, for sure. I don't think that there's going to be any question about that. Like the Empire is definitely going to use the death of Charlie Kirk to ramp things up. Lightwave writes, honestly, this has been a pretty eventful month. Yeah, I mean, the Empire is like, if you watched a building explode, that would be eventful. And if you wanted to focus on every single little piece of the building's explosion, right, you would describe it as eventful. And that the Empire is declining, and it's falling apart, and it isn't going to survive. And so there's, as the Empire begins its collapse, I shouldn't say begins. I've been watching the collapse of the Empire for a long time, and that it's just becoming nakedly obvious now. And the assassination of Charlie Kirk is one of these moments of just like, oh, yeah, like the civil society is becoming unmoored. It's disconnecting from itself. It's not really, and I don't think it can restabilize itself. That's why there is this strong swing towards fascism that's happening throughout the Empire, because that is the last attempt to stabilize things and to say, no, we're not collapsing, everything's fine, make America great again, everything will stabilize and will stand up strong, and we will be a strong, stable nation. But it's not going to work. Right? It's not going to work. For just basic economic reasons, it's just not going to work. Lightwave continues. My honest opinion with Charlie Kirk, I'm like, be careful what you preach, because it could come back to bite you. Yeah. Like, Kirk wasn't walking around preaching peace and love. Right? He was walking around preaching a message that said, although, if you walk around preaching a message of love, you get shot anyway, so it seems like you can't win. Can't win for trying. So I'd like to pivot away from Charlie Kirk for a minute. We've got a new one from Chris Hedges. And I always promise myself that I'm going to read Chris Hedges' articles whenever he comes up. He is, of course, focused on the Gaza genocide, as we all should. I personally find it very difficult to watch what's going on in the Gaza Strip. That the one thing I have been focusing on, I don't have an article for it in front of me because I forgot to find one for it, but is the flotilla. Greta Thunberg, as well as plenty of other celebrities, are launching a flotilla of, I think it's like 25 ships. It's like quite a few ships. And they're floating this flotilla towards Gaza in a hope to break through. And Israel has, of course, lit fire to one of the ships that Greta was supposed to be on. 44 ships. Thank you, Anemone. Yeah. This is the struggle that I've been having with this particular story, is I just can't bear to look at it. And I think a big reason why I just can't bear to look at it is that this month has been a very emotional month for me personally. Just like a lot has changed for me, and a lot is going to continue changing for me. And I'm finding that I'm having to put a lot of faith in the universe and in sort of the divine timing of everything. And when I look at, for my own personal life, and when I look at what's going on in Gaza, it's just, it's too overwhelming. It's too much. I just can't do it. And so I rely on people like Chris Hedges to create that snapshot, to create something condensed and well articulated so that I can make sense of things for myself. And so I'm going to read this one from the Chris Hedges report. Death of the Holocaust industry. The genocide in Gaza has exposed the weaponization of the Holocaust as a vehicle not to prevent genocide, but to perpetuate it, not to examine the past, but to manipulate the present. Nearly all Holocaust scholars who see in any criticism of Israel a betrayal of the Holocaust have refused to condemn the genocide in Gaza. Not one of the institutions dedicated to researching and commemorating the Holocaust have drawn the obvious historical parallels or decried the mass slaughter of Palestinians. Holocaust scholars, with a handful of exceptions, have exposed their true purpose, which is not to examine the dark side of human nature, the frightening propensity we have to commit evil, but to sanctify Jews as eternal victims and absolve the ethno-nationalist state of Israel of the crimes of settler colonialism, apartheid, and genocide. The hijacking of the Holocaust, the failure to defend Palestinian victims because they are Palestinian, has imploded the moral authority of Holocaust studies and Holocaust memorials. They have been exposed as vehicles not to prevent genocide, but to perpetuate it, not to explore the past, but manipulate the present. Any tepid recognition that the Holocaust may not be the exclusive property of Israel and its Zionist supporters is swiftly shut down. The Holocaust Museum LA deleted an Instagram post that read, "Never again can't only mean never again for Jews," after a backlash. In the hands of Zionists, never again means precisely that. Never again, only for Jews. Amy Césaire, in Discourse on Colonialism, writes that Hitler seemed exceptionally cruel only because he presided over the humiliation of the white man, applying to Europe the colonialist procedures which until then had been reserved exclusively for the Arabs of Algeria, the coolies of India, and the Négres d'Afrique. It was this distortion of the Holocaust as unique that troubled Primo Levi, who was imprisoned in Auschwitz from 1944 to 1945 and wrote Survival in Auschwitz. He was a fierce critic of the apartheid state of Israel and its treatment of the Palestinians. He saw the Shoah as an inexhaustible source of evil that is perpetuated as hatred in the survivors and springs up in 1,000 ways against the very will of all, as a thirst for revenge, as moral breakdown, as negation, as weariness, as resignation. He deplored Manichaeism, those who shun nuance and complexity, and who reduce the river of human events to conflicts and conflicts to duels, us to them. He warned that the network of human relations inside the concentration camps was not simple. It could not be reduced to 2 blocks, victims and persecutors. The enemy, he knew, was outside, but also inside. Levi writes about Mordechai Chaim Rumkowski, a Jewish collaborator who ruled the Lotz ghetto. Rumkowski, known as King Chaim, turned the ghetto into a slave labor camp, which enriched the Nazis and himself. He deported opponents to death camps. He raped and molested girls and women. He demanded unquestioned obedience and embodied the evil of his oppressors. For Levi, he was an example of what many of us, under similar circumstances, are capable of becoming. We are all mirrored in Rumkowski. His ambiguity is ours. It is our second nature. We hybrids molded from clay and spirit, Levi wrote in The Downed and the Saved. His fever is ours, the fever of our Western civilization that transcends into hell with trumpets and drums, and its miserable adornments are the distorting image of our symbols of social prestige. Like Rumkowski, we are too dazzled by power and prestige as to forget our essential fragility, Levi adds. Willingly or not, We come to terms with power, forgetting that we are all in the ghetto, and that the ghetto is walled in, that outside the ghetto reigns the lords of death, and that close by the train is waiting. These bitter lessons of the Holocaust, which warns that the line between the victim and the victimizer is razor thin, that we can all become willing executioners, that there is nothing intrinsically moral about being Jewish or a survivor of the Holocaust, are what Zionists seek to deny. Levi, for this reason, was persona non grata in Israel. Holocaust studies, which exploded in the 1970s and were epitomized by the deification of the Holocaust survivor and the fervent Zionist Elie Wiesel, literary critic Alfred Kazin called him a Jesus of the Holocaust, have now surrendered any claim to championing universal truths. These Holocaust scholars use a benchmark evil, as Norman Finkelstein points out, not as a moral compass, but rather as an ideological club. The mantra, "Do not compare," Finkelstein writes, is the mantra of moral blackmailers. Zionists find in the Holocaust and the Jewish state a sense of purpose and meaning, as well as a cloying moral superiority. After the 1967 war, when Israel seized Gaza and the West Bank, Israel, as Nathan Glazer approvingly observed, became the religion of the American Jews. Holocaust studies are based on the fallacy that unique suffering confers unique entitlement. This was always the purpose of what Finkelstein calls the Holocaust industry. Jewish suffering is depicted as ineffable, uncommunicable, and yet always to be proclaimed, writes the European historian Charles Mayer in The Unmasterable Past, History, Holocaust, and German National Identity. It is intensely private, not to be diluted, but simultaneously public, so that Gentile society will conform and confirm the crimes. A very particular suffering must be enshrined in public sites, Holocaust museums, memory gardens, deportation sites, dedicated not as Jewish, but civic memorials. But what is the role of a museum in a country such as the United States, far from the site of the Holocaust? Under what circumstances can a private sorrow serve simultaneously as public grief? And if genocide is certified as a public sorrow, then must we not accept the credentials of other particular sorrows too? Do Armenians and Cambodians also have a right to publicly funded Holocaust museums? And do we need memorials to Seventh-day Adventists and homosexuals for their persecution at the hands of the Third Reich? Any crime Israel carries out in the name of its survival, its right to exist, is justified in the name of this uniqueness. There are no limits. The world is black and white, a never-ending battle against Nazism, which is protean depending on who Israel targets. To challenge this bloodlust is to be an anti-Semite facilitating other genocide of Jews. This simplistic formula not only serves the interests of Israel, but also the interests of colonial powers that carried out their own genocides, one they seek to obscure. What was the annihilation of Native Americans by European settlers, the Armenians by the Turks, the Indians in the Bengal famine by the British, or the Soviet-orchestrated famine in the Ukraine? What was the dropping of the atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki? Is manifest destiny any different from the Nazis' embrace of the concept of Lebensraum? These too were holocausts, fueled by the same dehumanization and bloodlusts. The sacralization of the Nazi Holocaust offers a bizarre quid pro quo, arming and funding the State of Israel, preventing UN resolutions and sanctions from being adopted to condemn its crimes, and demonizing Palestinians and their supporters is proof of atonement and support for Jews. Israel, in return, absolves the West of its indifference to the plight of Jews during the Holocaust, and Germany for perpetrating it. Germany uses this unholy alliance to separate Nazism from the rest of German history. including the genocide German colonists carried out against the Nama and Herero in German Southwest Africa, now Namibia. Such magic, Israeli historians and genocide scholar Raz Siegel writes, legitimizes racism against Palestinians at the very moment that Israel perpetrates genocide against them. The idea of Holocaust uniqueness thus reproduces rather than challenges the exclusionary nationalism and settler colonialism that led to the Holocaust. Siegel, the director of the program in Holocaust and Genocide Studies at Stockton University in New Jersey, wrote an article on Gaza on October 13th, 2023, 6 days after the incursion by Hamas and other Palestinian fighters into Israel, titled, "A Textbook Case of Genocide." This denunciation from an Israeli Holocaust scholar, whose family members perished in the Holocaust, was a very lonely stance. Siegel saw in the Israeli government's immediate demand that Palestinians evacuate the north of Gaza and the blood-curdling demonization of the Palestinians by Israeli officials. The defense minister said Israel was fighting human animals, the stench of genocide. The whole idea about prevention and never again is that as we teach our students, there are red flags, that once we notice them, we're supposed to work in order to stop the process that could escalate to genocide, Siegel said when I interviewed him, even if it's not genocidal yet. Holocaust studies as a field might be dead, which is not necessarily a bad thing, he continued. If indeed Holocaust studies is intertwined from the beginning with the ideology of global Holocaust memory, maybe it's good that we won't have Holocaust studies anymore. And maybe it will open the door for even more interesting and important research on the Holocaust as history, as real history. Siegel paid for his courage and his honesty. The offer to lead the University of Minnesota's Center for Holocaust and Genocide Studies, which has issued no condemnation of the genocide, was revoked. Nearly 2 years into the genocide, the International Association of Genocide Scholars finally issued a statement saying that Israel's conduct meets the legal definition set out in the UN Convention on Genocide. But the vast majority of Holocaust scholars remain mute, endlessly condemning the atrocities committed by Hamas while ignoring those committed by Israel. They were mute when South Africa argued before the International Court of Justice that Israel was committing genocide. They were mute when Amnesty International published a report on December 2024 accusing Israel of genocide. How many Palestinian students apply to graduate programs in Holocaust and genocide studies around the world? Usually none. How many Palestinian scholars identify themselves as scholars in this field? They, too, can be counted on one hand, Siegel writes in a co-authored article in the Journal of Genocide Research. Genocide is coded in the DNA of Western imperialism. Palestine has made this clear. The genocide is the next stage in what the anthropologist Arjun Appadurai calls a vast worldwide Malthusian correction that is geared to preparing the world for the winners of globalization, minus the inconvenient noise of its losers. The funding and arming of Israel by the United States and European nations as it carries out genocide has imploded the post-World War II international legal order. It no longer has credibility. The West cannot lecture anyone about democracy, human rights, or the supposed virtues of Western civilization. At the same time that Gaza induces vertigo, a feeling of chaos and emptiness, it becomes, for countless powerless people, the essential condition of political and ethical consciousness in the 21st century, just as the First World War was for a generation in the West. Pankaj Mishra writes in The World After Gaza, "The ability to peddle the fiction that the Nazi Holocaust is unique, or that Jews are uniquely entitled, has ended. The genocide presages a new world order, one where Europe and the United States, along with their proxy Israel, are pariahs. Gaza has illuminated a dark truth. Barbarism and Western civilization are inseparable. It's always very sobering to read something written by Chris Hedges. Hedges is a very sober writer. And everything that the West is doing overseas, and everything that it is doing to other nations, it's coming inward. It's coming inward. That they will govern America the way that they have governed Gaza. And good people, innocent people, are going to be drawn into pointless conflict. It's becoming impossible to deny that America is going to fall into a civil war. And it seems as though that's accelerating and becoming faster. And I can't help but think about the people who I know in the United States who are on the front lines of all of that and who are fighting. And I hope that they're safe. I hope that they're safe. Mark, good luck, my man. Good luck. Congratulations to you, my man. Congratulations. Much love to you, Mark. And I find myself falling back into that old familiar loop. Just the familiar cry. Oh, thank you for the donation, Mark. The familiar cry that it just doesn't need to be this way. That it just doesn't need to be this way. That there's plenty to go around. There's plenty to go around. We have the resources. We have the food. We have the shelter. We have people who want to be involved in healthcare, in education. We have it. We do. There's no shortages. We live in a world of abundance where everything is right in front of us. And we're choosing this. We're deciding it. We're collectively manifesting it. We're collectively coming together as a people, and we're collectively saying, life should be made harder. Life should be made more difficult. And we're doing it based on a religious ideology that we call capitalism. And that we just have to keep living in it. And we just have to keep going to work. And we just have to keep persisting. And no one has time for love. No one has time for peace. No one has time for rest. And it truly breaks my heart. It truly breaks my heart. And I know for myself, I simply refuse to participate. That my participation in this, if you want to call it society, or civilization, if you want to call it that, we need a word for it, so that might as well be the word. My participation is going to be as minuscule as possible. That I am going to read books to the elderly, teach English to people who know how to teach, who need to speak English. And hopefully, the good Lord will find it in their divine timing for me to find love, companionship. That would be nice. That'd be truly a beautiful thing. Oh, I've gotten very introspective again on this one, guys. And I think I'm happy to draw this one to a close. I know that these ones have been short these last few times, but the truth, I think I should start talking about this more on stream. The truth is that I've been really struggling with whether or not doing this live stream is of benefit anymore. Is it actually something useful? Is this good for me? Is this good for us? And I've been struggling with that recently. Not even that recently, honestly. And so it's something I want to start talking about more. That maybe there will come a time where I say farewell to this. Ongoing writes, hoped you had mentioned Nepal and France. Yeah, I mean, other places are overthrowing their governments. Nepal was quite serious. I mean, Nepal exists more in the global south. Martin Carvalho writes, I love you, John. You helped open my eyes. Well, isn't that nice? Isn't that nice? Oddity asks, will you return to graveyard walk videos or doing the dishes videos? You know, Oddity, now that I'm talking about it, I might as well just go all the way with it. My life is shifting in a big way. I feel like I'm turning towards a more spiritual path. And that I'm turning towards more of just opening myself up to surrendering to what's going on with the universe. I think about what's happening in my life right now and how it seems as though it's completely out of my control, and yet it does seem to be working to my benefit. That I know it's a bit hooby-jooby to say, and I understand that, and that not everyone is going to understand it. And some of you may even roll your eyes at the idea. But it does feel as though the universe is conspiring in my favor. And that all I'm really being asked to do is nothing. Is to simply show up. To simply show up for the things that unfold in front of me. And that I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. And that I'm not supposed to be doing something else. And that I'm just supposed to keep the faith. And that I'm not supposed to be pushing, and I'm not supposed to be fighting, and I'm not supposed to be struggling. So much of my life has been this sense that I need to be struggling. And that I should be struggling. And that there's struggle and that there's fight. And I feel like that throughout this last month. I feel like that has fallen away from me. That it's no longer about struggling for me. It's just about letting it all go and having faith in the universe around me and in the idea that as long as I show up to the things I'm meant to show up for, then it's all going to work itself out for me. And I feel that. And I know that this is getting into like really, really wobbly territory. I respect that. But that seems to be what's happening to me. Like, just something as simple as this new job of reading to the elderly. It's just come out of nowhere. And right as that began to manifest into my life, my cafe job began to ask for compromise of me. and to basically get harder and more difficult and basically say you can't be a unique person anymore. That's what always made that cafe job tolerable, is that I was permitted to be the person. I was permitted to be my own person. I was allowed to be my own person and to follow my own initiatives and my own ideas. And I was able to talk to people. And just as this other opportunity comes up in my life, this cafe begins to clamp down on me and say, okay, no, we don't want you to be that anymore. We don't want that any longer. And so I took the leap of faith. And I said, okay, then I'm not going to participate in this anymore. Because if I can't be the person that I am, if the people who are employing me don't have trust and faith in my experience and my expertise and what I'm doing, then I'm going to go somewhere else. And it's just like the bees. It's just like my bees. I can't yell at them and scream at them to try to get them to produce honey faster. They exist on their own timeline. And so it is with this. And it feels like it feels like that's where I am right now. It feels like I've stepped into some kind of divine timing. That I am not at the wheel of this thing. Long Defiant writes, I know a manager at a health food store who probably brings in an extra $250K per year just because of their personality. Hugely popular. If the store demanded conformity, the store would sink. Yeah, I think that the people who came in and took over my cafe don't really care about the cafe. I think that's really the long and short of it. That they don't view the cafe as the reason why they have that space. They're event planners and food caterers, right? They're caterers. So for them, it's about having an event space. And they just sort of inherited this cafe. And I don't think they actually know how to run it. I think they have corporate ideas. And corporate ideas are dead ideas. And listening to long-term staff is not part of the corporate culture or part of the corporate idea. Right? And if you're not going to listen to your workers, and if you're not actually going to listen to what's going on in your stores, then I just don't think they care. Like that's another thing about, like, you get an entity that's too big, right? And entities that get too big, they just stop caring. Like, what's the difference between $2 billion and $2.1 billion? Right? Like, it's yeah, it's too bad they wouldn't let you help them. Foot traffic is a major advertisement for a caterer. Yeah, I mean, I just think that they're too big an organization, and the truth is that I don't think that they were putting the resources into it that they needed to be successful at it. And I don't think they are going to be successful at it. Like, I think eventually they'll, like, turn the corner and something. Like, they're big enough that they can take losses for a minute, but I just don't think they actually understand how to run a cafe. Like, cafe work is about, and I've seen this over and over and over again in my career. I think the worst version of this that I ever saw, because it was so naked, it was so blatant. I worked in a cafe And it was just an independent cafe, right? There were a pair of owners who didn't even work in the cafe that owned it. It was a husband-wife team, and they owned this cafe. And they had a barista on their team that was the definition of a barista. Like, lovely woman, highly personable, really, really able to connect to people, understood the whole point of a cafe culture, right? And one day, there was a big storm that happened on the day, and she was the person on the floor when the storm was happening. And there was a customer in the cafe. And she, of course, does all her tasks because she's a professional and she understands, like, she's a barista. She understands what to do. And so she spends a good deal of time in conversation with this customer. And for this, because these are the types of owners that, like, will watch people through the cameras, that creepy kind of oddly voyeuristic activity that owners will do to their staff. And because of this, they saw, oh, she's just talking to someone. So they fired her. Well, you know what they did? You know what she did? She literally walked across the street to the cafe right across the street and said, hey, you know me. I'm that barista from across the street, right? And they said, oh, yeah, hey. And she said, are you hiring? And they said, for you? The best barista we've ever seen in our lives? Yes, absolutely. And they hired her on the spot, and they put her in the same exact position that she had over in the other place. So she was fine. She literally went boop, boop, walked across the street. And you know what happened to all of the customers that were coming to that establishment to see her? They walked across the street. And the cafe that fired her folded 3 months later. Like, owners of these establishments, I've seen it over and 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 over again. Owners of these establishments do not know what they're doing. Flatline, bare bones, hard. They do not know what they're doing. And so many times I've been like, you should just talk to the workers. You should just talk to the workers. Like, just ask the workers what they think. Or if you see the worker doing something, maybe go up to them and be like, hey, what's that about? For me, the straw that broke the camel's back in this cafe was that every single time there was any customer complaint, and like, I'm the person that's talking to the public most of the time when I'm in the cafe, right? So I talk to like 1,000 people a day, right? And so you think, okay, 1,000 people a day, so times that by 3, because I'm there 3 days, so 3,000 people in a weekend, right? Let's be more conservative. Let's say 2,000 people. Let's just be on the more conservative side. Do you think one person during that entire period of time is going to find something to complain about? And so when that happened, because we live in a primarily fascist society where the majority worldview is fascism, when that would happen, instead of the company being like, oh, okay, some crazy person or somebody said some kind of thing, they would come to me and expect me to change and expect me to alter what I was doing. And it's just like, no, that's not how this works. It'd be like trying to make a television show to please every single person. Long Defiant writes, you could probably make more money as a server in a high-end restaurant. Tips can be unreal around here. I think I'm going to pursue the thing that I'm pursuing because I want to. That I'm really kind of finished with trying to please other people. I think that what I'm going to do now is do the thing that I want to do because I want to do it. And I'm just no longer interested. Like, I'm just no longer interested in making decisions from a position of fear. Of just like, oh, gotta get my money, gotta go. No, I'm gonna make decisions based on what I want to do and what I love to do. And I'm gonna have faith in it. Because I like me. And I like who I am. Hell, I'll even say I love me. And I love who I am. And I believe that it's going to work out. Alright. This got very introspective, but I think I'm going to close this one down, guys. Always remember, each and every one of you is a quantum being, walking around in quantum energy. These billionaires are spending hundreds of billions of dollars in the hopes you'll never realize it. Revolt. Rebel. Repent. Good luck. We're going to need it.